continue our coverage of the latest news coming out of Austin regarding the redistricting map. Governor Greg Abbott on Tuesday asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove Houston Representative Jean Wu, chair of the House Democratic Caucus, from office. And this is an unprecedented escalation in Republicans' efforts to resume business in the legislature and advance new congressional maps. At least 50 House Democrats remain out of the state to prevent the chamber from obtaining a quorum, the minimum number of members necessary to undertake legislative business. This is an effort to delay the passage of new congressional lines that could net 5 more seats for Republicans. And as Frank mentioned, joining us now is former U.S. Representative Colin Allred, who served as the U.S. Representative for Texas's 32nd Congressional District from 2019 to 2025. In July, Allred announced he would run for the U.S. Senate again in 2026. Thank you for joining us today, Colin. Thanks for being here on Hello Houston.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mr. Allred, in July, you were at a rally right here in Houston's Fifth Ward and very publicly criticized the redistricting map. Do you think the Texas Democrat lawmakers made the right decision to leave the state and break quorum?
I really do. And I think this was the last tool that they had in their toolbox. I testified against these maps. Hundreds of other Texans showed up at hearings around the state and in Austin to testify against these ridiculous maps and this outrageous power grab. They were not listened to. And so this was the final tool that these legislators had in their toolbox to try and slow this down, make sure folks know what's happening, have a discussion about how outrageous this is, that we're in the middle of our decade. This is not a normal time to be doing redistricting. It's been ordered by the White House, and they're blatantly and openly saying they're going to steal 5 congressional seats. And this should bother everyone, regardless of party. This is an attack on our democracy.
Well, Representative, it is bothering a lot of people. As we heard, the news of today is the bomb threat that happened at the hotel that some of our Democratic legislators are staying at up in Chicago. And I'm curious your thoughts on the potential for escalating violence and also what it says about the political atmosphere we are all witnessing right now.
It's such a good point. And, I was there on January 6th when that violent mob tried to prevent us in Congress from certifying the results of the election. As the only former NFL linebacker in the room, I thought I was going to have to hold a door while my colleagues escaped. That is where we are right now in our democracy. And we have to walk back from this precipice. And we have to try and remember that we're all Americans first. And that we can have political fights, but those fights can't cross over into violence. And it's a real concern. And anyone who's been in public life in recent years knows about this. But this is something that to me is also an assault on your democracy when legislators feel like doing their legislative capacity could put their life at risk.
Well, Mr. Allred, yesterday we were talking about this, obviously, and I offhandedly said to Celeste and Ernie, do you think President Trump could order the National Guard to go in and get a plane and arrest the Democrats and put them on a plane back to Texas? And we sort of shrugged that off. But now Cornyn is saying that he wants the FBI to go and do exactly that. Where do you think this is going to go realistically and legally? Where can it go?
Yeah. Well, let's be very clear. Breaking quorum is a legitimate legislative function that's been done multiple times, not only in Texas, but in other legislative bodies. So let's not pretend like this is, illegal or that, law enforcement has to get involved in terms of the FBI. I think John Cornyn is worried about his primary election and he's trying to posture. But this is the problem. This is part of the problem, is that all this posturing and all of this trying to, blustering, somebody's out there listening and they then think, well, I'm going to send a bomb threat. And so we have to be more responsible in our discussions about these things. Well, and when I'm talking about this, I try and be responsible about it and say, this is what I think is happening, but I'm not, attacking somebody personally.
Well, talk about posturing. All we heard about was Epstein, and the United States representatives said, let's go home for summer and not talk about that. So they did almost exactly the same thing. The Republicans said they don't want to discuss this. We want this to drop, so we're going to just leave. it's not exactly the same thing, but this kind of just sort of truancy isn't out of the question for either party, is it?
That's right. I mean, the Speaker of the House closed the House and said, because I think we're going to lose these votes on revealing, what happened here and what is known, I'm just going to send you all home.
Right.
And, for a country of 350 million people, we need to have a Congress that's working, but it's not. And so you're right. Yeah.
Mr. Allred, I have a question in regards to timing of this. And the fact of the matter is just last month, the state went through a devastation in central Texas. We understand that there are other priorities and top issues on the agenda, such as flood warning and systems. Do you think that this was the right time for Democrats, lawmakers, to leave the state when we do have some extremely pressing issues that affect all Texans?
Thank you for saying that, because that's what the focus should have been of this special session. Every Texan I talk to doesn't think that we needed to have, this session be about redistricting and trying to force 5 districts through, creative drawing of lines to be completely unrepresentative. It should have been on flood relief, flood prevention, recovery, knowing that we're going to get 100-year floods every few years now, that we just had a record brush fire in the Panhandle last year. That was the biggest brush fire we've ever had, that we've had storms, of course, like Harvey and others hit the Houston area that are stronger than they should be. So we have to be prepared for these disasters. That's what this special session should have been about. But the governor was trying to use that as cover to then force through this agenda. And that's why these folks had to take the step that they took. But I guarantee you that they are not only ready, but more than willing to work on disaster relief and recovery. But we have not been given that opportunity in terms of the legislature. Their focus has been on something else.
Correct me if I am wrong on this, but the governor could have set the agenda in the order of first dealing with the emergency response concerns, other concerns the state has, knowing that this redistricting was going to be a touchy subject and was going to lead to trouble. He could have put that later so the actual work of the people could have gotten done first, and then we could have had this. But by setting it the way he did, it stalls everything out until this is done. So your thoughts on that? Am I accurate in this?
Exactly right. No, I mean, you're exactly right. He sets the agenda for the special session itself. This should have been one focused just on what happened in the Hill Country, and also just a broader discussion about how we've not fully invested in what we know we need to have in terms of overlapping systems for disaster preparedness and recovery. These are things that we need to be talking about as a state. I worked on it at the federal level. That should have been the focus of this session. And if they wanted to then come back and do another session on forcing through these gerrymandered maps, that would have been the responsible thing to do. But instead, trying to push it together, it is trying to mask what you're actually trying to do. And I think Texans have seen right through that.
Well, if he had put it last, I think that he knew that this walkout was going to occur. So he wasn't going to put it last because it would have kind of faded away after doing the real work of the people. It's interesting to me that Governor Abbott has said that this redistricting is all about representing the people. And yet he has let these 2 Democratic positions, one of which is Sylvester Turner's seat, simply sit there vacant. So he's talking out of one side of his mouth about representation, but he really isn't doing anything about it.
And that's a historic district as well, as y'all know. Beginning with Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland, obviously Sheila Jackson Lee, my friend and colleague for many years, your former mayor, and my friend Sylvester Turner. And that seat, the people of the 18th district have had no representation for months. Well, and the election could have been called much sooner. And so and then now they're also trying to redraw it to mess with that district and also to mess with Al Green's district. This is something that folks should understand. That when they're doing this, it's not just politics. I mean, these are communities that have been fighting for representation for in some cases generations. Today is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act that was only passed because John Lewis got his skull cracked walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge when he was 25 years old trying to register voters. Blood was spilt for us to get to this point where we could have a democracy that could be somewhat representative.
Let me ask you this. If anyone's watching on YouTube, they can see you're sitting in front of a wall that says Colin Allred for Texas. You are interested in getting to the Senate. If you get there, what is it you can do? What can senators do to change this? Because as we watch across the country, other states now wanting to do the same thing, and as a reaction, it looks like this whole system is going to be a clown show, actually.
That's right. It's a race to the bottom. Before I was ever in Congress, after my NFL career, I was a voting rights lawyer. And I became a voting rights lawyer because there was a line in the Supreme Court case that spoke to me that said that the right to vote was preservative of other rights. Every right is derived basically from our democracy and from your right to vote in that democracy. And so I feel incredibly strongly that we have to ban gerrymandering nationwide. This is something we can do legislatively. I had a bill when I was in Congress that we passed out of the House. We just couldn't get past the filibuster in the Senate that would have banned exactly what's happening right now. And I hate to say it, but I predicted that this would happen if we didn't pass that legislation, that folks would take advantage of this. And so we can legislatively ban this. We can also change.
Can you, though, on the federal level?
itself.
Or does
Yeah.
that interfere with the state's rights to hold their own independent elections?
Good question. And what we would do in that case, it would be limited to that in congressional seats, you can't, it's impermissible to do what they call partisan gerrymandering, which I think the Supreme Court should have already said was impermissible. To add that to what we already have in place, which is that you can't gerrymander on the basis of race. And that would prevent exactly what we're seeing right now.
Would you support a compromise like a bipartisan commission to draw lines every decade?
Yeah, that's right. That's the next part of it. And I'm sorry, thank you for mentioning that. While you ban it, you then also put in place an independent, nonpartisan commission structure for every state that's drawn by experts in that state and who know those communities, who then would draw the districts based on communities of interest and based on representation instead of trying to benefit one side or the other.
I know you've only got about a minute left with us and you've got to get on your way, but my last question to you would be, what do you see possibly happening in Texas at this point? Is there anywhere we're going, or is it just this map is going to get approved?
You know, I just want to say that I'm incredibly proud of the folks who have taken this step to leave the state. I think that they're taking a big risk and they know that, but they're doing it for all of us. And discussions like this are important as this is going on. So I want to thank you for covering this, because folks should know what is being done and what they're trying to do, and that they are trying to take 5 majority-minority congressional districts and change them so that those voices will be silenced in these communities of color, so they will not be able to elect representatives of their choosing. And it's by design. And it includes in the Houston Metro, my district that I used to represent, Texas 32, will be completely gone. It was a majority minority district. It will be completely destroyed, and it will silence many voices in our state. And I'm glad that we're talking about this. And I think this quorum break is helping foster that conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Former U.S. Representative Colin Allred, who served as a U.S. Representative for Texas's 32nd Congressional District. Thanks again for joining us on Hello Houston.